last lesson we have studied the progression of development of lower forms of intelligent life, from primitive to advanced civilizations, and the hurdles that they must inevitably pass to avoid premature extinction.
Sometime in the next 15 years, the end will come. And by the end, I mean an utter breakdown of the capacity of the planet to support humanity.
In growing cities like Chennai in the south, large families, once needed for farming, are no longer always seen as the key to success.
Previously, my father used to have 4 children, and my grandfather used to have 7 children. But the things have changed. Even myself, I have only 2 children. Even my sister is having only 1 kid, because now education becomes the first priority here.
The population bomb was defused by urbanization, by people getting out of poverty all over the world, by having enough to eat so you didn't have multiple children in the hopes that some of them would survive.
When intelligent life forms first emerge in the evolutionary process, their tool-making ability leads to a radical break with the surrounding ecosystems that would otherwise sustain them.
Without going hunting, Andre wouldn't have any meat to feed his wife and children. He and his friend invited me for lunch, but first we had to catch it.
Andre, what sort of animals have you caught whilst you've been a hunter?
Oui, je vais commencer par le plus gros, le buffle, le gorille, le chimpanzé, le sanglier, l'antilope et tout le reste des petits animaux.
If you look at the people in some of the villages here, if you ask them how they feel when they see a baby gorilla in the nappy, I think they will tell you, we want something to eat. Not the baby gorilla, of course, but we want something to eat. We want development.
We'll begin with the history of an extinct lower form of intelligent life in the 451st quadrant of outer space known as humans. We have been observing them for the last 50,000 years. Their demise is the failure to move beyond carbon and graduate to the progression from nuclear fission to fusion and ultimately to empty matter.
Deforestation is a last resort to survive. Over 2 billion people, almost a third of the world's population, still depend on charcoal. In Haiti, one of the world's poorest countries, charcoal is one of the population's main consumables. Once the pearl of the Caribbean, Haiti can no longer feed its population without foreign aid. On the hills of Haiti, only 2% of the forests are left. Stripped bare, nothing holds the soils back. The rainwater washes them down the hillsides as far as the sea. What's left is increasingly unsuitable for agriculture. In some parts of Madagascar, the erosion is spectacular. Whole hillsides bear deep gashes hundreds of meters wide. Thin and fragile, soil is made by living matter. With erosion, the fine layer of humus, which took thousands of years to form, disappears.
The Philippines is stuck between a rock and a hard place. The country is considered one of the most vulnerable places in the world to climate change, and it's planning to build 23 more coal-fired power plants, despite evidence that coal is extremely harmful to the environment. But being a developing nation, the Philippines is increasingly relying on coal as a cheap source of energy needed to fuel its economic growth. It's a dilemma for the country and other fast-growing economies in Asia like China and India, which are also looking to build hundreds of new coal-powered facilities. Philippine President Benigno Aquino told the BBC that reducing the use of coal is difficult because the country lacks natural gas importing facilities and renewable energy is too expensive.
India has an ambitious plan to double its coal production as part of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's push to bring power to 300 million people who live without electricity and give a boost to manufacturing.
2 weeks ago, it was revealed that an 8-year-old girl living in China's Jiangsu province had become the country's youngest lung cancer patient, with doctors pointing to China's high levels of pollution as the cause. Residents of Beijing and many other cities in China were warned to stay inside, and at the peak of the crisis, the air quality index in Beijing measured 775. To put this figure into context, anything below 50 is considered good, while anything above 300 is considered hazardous to humans. And then there's the phenomenon known as cancer villages. This map shows the location of 459 cancer villages. Linfen is located in Shanxi province, the heart of China's coal industry, and residents there claim that they literally choke on coal dust in the evening.
Japan is trying to restart its nuclear program, but 4 years on from the Fukushima nuclear disaster, it seems the biggest thing standing in its way is the Japanese people. The country has seen protests against Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's nuclear restart plan. The country's 18 nuclear plants have all been closed following 2011's meltdown, which is a big deal for a country that relied on nuclear power for close to 30% of its electricity. As foreign policy writes, in the meantime, imported fossil fuels have been filling that gap. Coal will be the only baseload option left to power about 30% or more of the Japanese electricity sector, which looks like a significant step back for the country that hosted the first substantive agreement on greenhouse gas emissions in 1997's Kyoto Protocol.
These humans were engaged in a constant struggle between their highly evolved minds and their reptilian brain, the seat of their rage and fear. They failed to rise beyond their tribal instincts.
The chimp militia are now at the very edge of their territory. The patrol moves off with a sense of purpose. They must remain silent until they close in on their rivals. The attack is on. The battle won, a grisly scene unfolds. An enemy youngster has been caught and killed. The carcass is shared between members of the group and eaten. Killing a competitor makes sense if you want to protect your food supply.
People need our help, and this is one of those times. So thank you for the help you provided and for the help you're going to provide.
What about climate? That's what caused this monster storm.
That guy in the middle, his name is Paul Offit. He just developed a rotavirus vaccine with a bunch of other people. It'll save the lives of 500,000 kids in the developing world every year. Pretty good, right? Well, it's good, except that Paul goes around talking about vaccines and says how valuable they are, and the people ought to just stop the whining. So, Paul's a terrorist. When Paul speaks in a public hearing, he can't testify without armed guards. He gets called at home because people like to tell him that they remember where his kids go to school. And why? Because Paul made a vaccine. Those fanatics, they weren't actually fanatics at all. They were thoughtful people, educated people, decent people. They were exactly like the people in this room. People wrap themselves in their beliefs, and they do it so tightly that you can't set them free. Not even the truth will set them free.
In the 1950s, psychologist Dr. Solomon Asch was among the first to examine the power of conformity.
Asch decided he wanted to see whether the average person, under the right circumstances, could be made to conform.
The Asch conformity experiment is legendary among social psychologists like Dr. Benjamin Zablocki.
Solomon Asch's concern was with conformity, and he wanted to see whether he could set up an experimental situation in which people would be led by social pressure to deny the evidence of their own senses and go along with the judgment of a group on a simple question which had to do with the length of lines.
The test begins with placing a subject in a room with a group of actors pretending to also be test subjects.
Here's Exhibit 1.
They are all shown a pair of cards. The first has a line drawn on it. The second has several lines of different lengths. The test subject is asked to pick the line that matches the one on the first card.
Everyone else, all of the actors who are pretending to be experimental subjects, give the wrong answer.
B.
After all of these actors have given the wrong answer,
B.
the turn comes to the real experimental subject.
The experiment aims to see if the test subject will ignore the group and answer correctly, or if the pressure of conformity will compel them to give the wrong answer.
It's A.
Initially, many test subjects give the correct answer, but the answer does not come rapidly. But as the test continues, most subjects conform to the group and start giving the wrong answer. The desire to be accepted overcomes the desire to do what's right.
What's found is that 75% of the experimental subjects deny the evidence of their own eyesight and conform.
The desire to be accepted overcomes the desire to do what's right.
Greetings and welcome to We take you now to the island nation of Japan on planet Earth. The date is August 6, 2016. It is the 70th anniversary of their first atomic bombing at the end of Earth's Second World War. Japan's capital city of Tokyo had just broken a record for its longest heat wave. This was at the beginning of a worldwide climate crisis. Japan had broken another record just days earlier. Life expectancy had reached its highest point ever. Japan is perennial longevity leader among nations in spite of experiencing 3 nuclear meltdowns and 2 atomic bombings. Japan's nuclear meltdowns had occurred 4 years earlier, and a catastrophic event that decimates the city of Fukushima. It is here that our story begins. As the Japanese people's reign as world leader in longevity continues unabated, and with no radiation casualties from the Fukushima meltdown, a tribe of Homo sapiens known as anti-nukers could draw up a giant imaginary apocalyptic plume of atomic radiation emanating from Japan that envelops the Earth and convinces world leaders to shut down most of the world's atomic nuclear power. Having lost most of its clean nuclear energy, time runs out for the Homo sapien. As the climate spins out of control, desperation for increasingly scarce drinking water leads to a third nuclear war. This time, a giant apocalyptic plume of atomic radiation actually does envelop the Earth. In the end, the humans have destroyed the Earth in order to save it.
We're discovering that the 80 solar farm schemes that are going forward want to basically bulldoze 1,000 square miles of Southern California desert. Well, as an environmentalist, we would rather that didn't happen. Saul Griffith did the numbers and figured out what it would take to get 13 clean terawatts of energy from wind, solar, and biofuels. And that area would be roughly the size of the United States, an area he refers to as Renewistan.
This is how much land we used for energy in 2010. If we want to achieve universal prosperity, universal development by 2050, we need 3 times, maybe 4 times as much energy. If it was all from nuclear, the energy footprint would actually shrink. If it were all from renewables, it would grow to be the size of North America and Alaska. How do humans save nature? Moving people out of their dependence on wood and agrarian poverty, choosing to have smaller families, access to modern energy so that forests are spared. Final, last, and important step, moving towards universal prosperity and nuclear energy. Can we do it? I think we can.
Fellow Mysterians, we are calling you from beyond your world. You who embrace the mystery. You who reject the keepers of truth. You who are the seekers of truth. We speak from beyond space and time. The greatest lesson that galactic history has taught us is that boldness is the key to all progress. Boldness has genius and power and magic. To all Mysterians from planet Earth, you have proved yourself worthy of a second chance. We have moved back the course of time. The path is now clear. Be bold and venture to new heights.